What is going on, everyone? Santakilos here, bringing you the Sheffield recap and takeaways from the most competitive and probably greatest powerlifting meet of all time, the Sheffield. Bear with me, I am coming off of sickness, so my voice is going to be a little raspy here. But just bear with me because I do have a lot to take away from this. To begin, we have the winners. We have Agata Sitko from Poland. Came out of not really nowhere, but dropped the weight class and performed one of the greatest meets for a woman ever. So congrats to her. I think she ended up with like a 600 dots, which is kind of crazy. And then out of nowhere, by no one's guess, Gustav Hedlund, 93 kg from Sweden. Wow. Dude came out. Not only did he came first, he beat Keiko. So that means a lot to the winners. So congratulations to both of them. Obviously, it is not an easy meet to win, as their whole point is to break world records and become the champion of all champions. So after watching the meet, I have some takeaways and some things I've kind of noticed that could be addressed going forward as well. So with that in mind, the first thing I want to talk about is the competitiveness between the female and the men's class. I believe that the female class was not only more competitive, but also more entertaining to watch than the men's. I was more so on the edge of my seat watching the women's, more so than the men's. The women's, I felt like there was a lot more at stake. You had a lot of people that could win. You had Agatha, you had Carola, you had possibly Natalie Richards and Zsa Jacob. You had Amanda Lawrence in a way. You had Sunita, who squatted 300.5 kg as a woman to win it. So there was a lot of competitiveness in the women's, and I felt like there was more at stake with that. Coming from the men's side, I believe it wasn't as competitive because some of these world records are a little out of reach. More so, they have to go to an extra extent in order to win. And with that, there's not that much competitiveness. Yes, they can go for the world record attempt. Like you had Keiko go for his bench world record again, and he got it, and he said he had more in the tank. Or you had Gavin, who hit the squat record. Jesus Oliveira's break the world record for the 120 pluses, held by Ray Williams for 6 years. So yes, you had those moments, but at the same time, I don't think that the men's was as competitive as the females, just because their world records are a little harder to reach. But the women, they were able to get it. You had a lot of people that could come on top and win it. So that's kind of one of my first takeaways. Second one I kind of noticed was the squat standards. And by squat standards, I mean depth more so than anything. Looking at the men's side, there was a lot more, which kind of seemed to me borderline. I'm not really one to speak because, yes, I bombed out on depth, and I know what depth is now, so enough of that. But I felt like it was very borderline at some points. I understand that the judges are the highest standards. They're international. They know everything, really. So they've been through a couple meets. They understand. They know everything related to squat depth and all the rules and everything related to that. But it felt like some were borderline. For example, one that I felt like was a little borderline was Anatoly's third attempt. And I was a little skeptical about that, per se. You can kind of say the same thing about Gavin's and Penna. It just felt like it was a little borderline, and the standard wasn't really there, and they kind of let loose a little bit, just because the refs probably understand that there's more on the line for this meet because it's all world records and there's money attached to it and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you're going to have a meet for champions of champions, you want to be roughing at the highest standard, per se. Squat depth needs to be on point, bench depth too, the pauses, I'll get to in a second, deadlift, all that kind of stuff. The standards need to be at the highest. These are the elite of the elite powerlifters, and that standard needs to be kept in order to have this meet continue and go forward. So it's just one of those rules that I notice could be a little bit monitored better, per se. The second one that I have is the bench press command. I honestly felt like it was non-existent, or there was no standard. There was no consistency with the press command. There were some people that were getting it like this. I saw another one, I think it was Carlos, for example. he got probably a 2-second count on it compared to the other lifters that got half a count. And another thing is, a lot of lifters, they like to sink it into their chest. With that being said, the bar is still moving, right, until they get to that point in their chest where they can't go any deeper. It felt like that for a lot of the bigger lifters that do that. And it felt like the bar was still moving, and yet they still got the press command. So, but same thing. If you're going to do a press command, I feel like it has to be the same standard for everyone. Either a 1 count, a 2 count, whatever it has to be. It needs to be the same for everyone, because in a way, the whole competition needs to be fair and reachable towards everyone, if that makes any sense. Next thing is a little controversial, but it's the jury. The jury, I feel like, does not need to be there. Here's why. Kevin Papa, owner of 110, kind of explains this a little better than me, and I kind of got the idea from him as well, so bear with me. The idea of the jury overturning a lift just doesn't make any sense to me, because this is what I'm saying. You have three judges that are as close to the lift as possible, right? You have the 2 on the side, and you have the front judge. How is it able to be overturned by a jury that possibly didn't even watch the lift, is not even paying attention to the lift, or doing anything related to the lift, right? Those 3 judges that are in front of the lift know exactly why they called it. They saw the lift in real time. They were paying attention to the lift in real time. So why does it make sense to have a jury that isn't going to do the same, right? They can watch a video recap and all this kind of stuff and say, oh, if you pause at this moment, they didn't hit depth, or they rushed the bench press command, or something related to that. Soft knees at lockout for deadlift. It doesn't make sense to me, because you have the referees there making the calls because they're seeing the lift in real time. How can you overturn something like that? How can you just overturn what was saw in real time to the 3 referees and just say, no, that doesn't make sense to me. No, their lift wasn't valid. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think the jury is one of the stupidest things added to powerlifting in the last couple of years. Because not only that, people can argue their calls. You can argue other people's calls. So if you didn't like that athlete for some reason and they got a red, you can go over to them and ask for if there's any way to get a second red, so it's a no lift. It just doesn't make sense to me. Same thing with overturning and trying to get your lift overturned. If the referees there saw that it was a no lift, suck it up. It was a no lift. Move the fuck on. That's how easy it should be. So the jury, stupidest thing ever created. But that's that. The last thing that I've been seeing a lot with the people that watch the meet, the powerlifters, and everyone that follows the sport, is calling out the athletes on common mistakes, okay? This really ticks me off, because as a community, we're supposed to build on each other, support each other, and do the best we can for each other. One of the big things I saw was that, yes, Jesus jumped the rack command on his third bench. Okay? As a powerlifter, you should know that you have a rack command on bench at the same time. But at the same time, people are human and we're bound to make mistakes, okay? It happens. It happens, okay? Big deal. You're complaining about an athlete you'll probably never compete against, never go toe-to-toe against, never be in the same vicinity or realm of them in lifting-wise. Just for what? I don't see what you're doing, okay? These athletes worked their asses off to be where they are. It didn't come overnight, okay? It took fucking years for them to get to the level that they are, be able to break world records in meets, and be able to go to meets like this in order to promote the sport and to grow the sport even more than it is now. So, calling out an athlete because of a common mistake is this dumbest thing, pettiest thing, most annoying and immature thing you could do if you are a powerlifter and if you're trying to support the sport, if you're trying to grow the sport, if you're trying to do more for the sport. We all make mistakes. We all are not perfect. We're human. We're bound to make mistakes. It's bound to happen. Okay? Jesus knows that he slipped up. Did he hold on to it as much? No. He's probably thinking about it going into training lately that, oh my God, I missed a rack command. I'm never letting this thing happen again to me. Good. He has motivation now to bring that into training and to never miss something like this again. Maybe he was bound to make that mistake in order to come back for training and be on another level when he comes back to Sheffield, if he comes back to Sheffield. Okay? We make mistakes. It's bound to happen. But don't go calling out powerlifters and go shitting on them because they made a mistake and they're at the highest level and they should know better. That's not a valid excuse, okay? It happens. We get excited sometimes in competition. Just let it go, okay? They know they fucked up. They know they messed up. They know what they did, okay? You don't have to belittle them and completely make them seem like they're not a good powerlifter at all. Stop that. Stop it. The last thing that I have kind of going forward for the Sheffield is the idea of how the men and women should be divided. So I believe, as much as I love the 93 battle between Carlos, Gavin, Gustav, and Keiko, I believe going forward, there should only be a limit to 2 people per weight class. And it should be the top 2. There shouldn't be the wild card kind of stuff. Like, yes, we have... I know Gavin has the world record squat now, and that's not going to be taken away for a while, per se, but it's pretty close for Gustav, I would say. But you didn't have anyone from the 59s. You didn't have anyone from the 59 class. You didn't have really anyone from the 105 class between Tony Cliff, who kind of was just, like, thrown in there, I would say. You didn't have anyone from the 120s, per se, besides Anatoly. You didn't have another 83 to compete with Gavin, you know. And then kind of going forward, like, yeah, we all know that Tiff is the only 47 in the class, and Naomi is the only, I think, 52 in the class. Really, it's really, really competitive, but I feel like it should be a more competitive nature. I feel like the athletes should be able to push themselves more because now they're competing more against a more unified flight of men and women. So with the 2 weight classes, I believe that it's not only going to be more evenly split between the classes, but I believe it's going to be more competitive because now you're going to have only one person to really focus on that's going to break world records in your class. But at the same time, you're also going to have to focus on everyone else because now they're pretty damn close to breaking world records. So I believe that that should kind of be the thing going forward. It also felt like too much to have a weight class dominate a third of the meet rather than like kind of have it more spread out per se and be able to have a lot more athletes come in. So that's just something I want to see going forward. I don't know if it's going to get implemented going forward. They're probably going to do the whole, if you won worlds, you're in, which I'm totally fine with. I think that should be the immediate ticket to get into Sheffield because not only are you a world champion, you should be pretty damn close to breaking world records. But on top of that, the other way to get in is kind of just like getting invited just because you're one of the top in the sport. But I believe it should be top 2 finishers at Worlds, honestly. But it should be spread across between each weight class. So that's all I got for the Sheffield kind of recap and takeaways. I hope you guys enjoy this. I kind of put this together last minute just because it's been over a week per se since the Sheffield has happened. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Maybe take something, agree, disagree. Fight with me in the comments. I want to see it. But that's all I got. So much more to say. Get your protein in. Santakilos out.